Ichigo Kurosaki, the substitute Soul Reaper, versus Naruto Uzumaki, the child of prophecy and 7th Hokage. A debate that has ignited passionate discussions amongst both characters' respective fan bases for decades, as these two iconic MCs from Shonen Jump's Big Three each possess unique powers, personalities, and backstories that have endeared them to fans around the world. However, it seems that no one can come to the conclusion of who the stronger character of the two is without showing bias towards their favorite series, which is why I'm here today with my friend Mr. Crafty Scales to go over both characters' individual stats like AP, durability, hacks, and speed to determine who wins this matchup and why. Before we get into the scaling though, I would like to quickly just ask that you like the video and subscribe to my channel, as I'm trying to hit 5k subs by the end of the year, and your support would help tremendously. To begin the scaling though, we'll start off with Naruto, who in terms of attack potency ranges anywhere from planetary to even universal, via being directly comparable to Otsutsuki like Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and Kaguya, who have planet-splitting statements as well as direct feats of being able to create and destroy separate time spaces. And even though I don't necessarily agree with the latter of these metas in forms of scaling due to their lack of empirical evidence and think planet-level Naruto is far more consistent, I still feel as though it's important to at least acknowledge these arguments for people who do opt to scale Naruto this high. Also, depending on what meta you find to be the most consistent, Naruto would also have comparable durability to his AP via Newton's third law, as well as via direct feats of him taking hits from characters like Ishiki who are stronger than Naruto himself, which would give him anywhere from planetary to universal level durability. As for Naruto's speed though, this is a little more complicated to discuss due to the overall discourse when it comes to speed on YouTube, as the versus community has slowly devolved into a debate on who can blitz in one shot who with Thurineg, which is why in my last video I just proposed that if both characters being scaled have displayed consistent FTL feats, then they should just be scaled relative to one another in terms of speed to avoid a race of who can outcalc stack who. However, I am aware that there are people who are opposed to me opting to scale speed this way, so if you're one of those people and want an exact number for Naruto's speed, then the best you can do is start with this calc of base killer B intercepting the Raikage at 116 times faster than light, which would scale to KCM1 Naruto as he was shown to move alongside and combo attack with B on multiple occasions. Keep in mind though, this is just how fast KCM1 Naruto is, as KCM2 Naruto is much faster by comparison, since he was able to keep up with the same KCM2 Minato who was already considered as fast as KCM1 Naruto while just in base. Which would mean Naruto, even before receiving 6 paths amps and fighting the Otsutsuki, would already be capable of fighting at over 1160 times faster than light while massively lowballing. Skipping ahead to Naruto and his abilities though, while he's far from a hacks-based fighter and has become a bit of a meme for only having 3 jutsu, they're still extremely versatile, like his Rasen Shuriken, which is a Durarneg jutsu that attacks on a cellular level, and his signature Shadow Clone jutsu, which allows him to produce thousands of copies of himself that are just as strong and can perform all of his techniques. Also, even though a lot of people tend to overlook this, Naruto also has some insane abilities like resistance to soul erasure, extrasensory perception that spans across universes, analytical prediction that exceeds the 6 paths Mangekyo Sharingan, and regeneration so potent that it allows him to recover entire organs in moments. But now that I've gone over Naruto's scaling and abilities, we can now transition to the Ichigo's, which my good friend Mr. Crafty Scales will be covering.
Starting off with the speed of Bleach. In chapter 91, Uryu was able to move so fast that it was essentially able to move faster than the light that can erase his shadow, or is essentially faster than his shadow. Now when crunching the numbers or doing the calculations, they consistently range around 50% of the speed of light. Now this can be consistent, as if you remember in the beginning of the series, Ichigo was able to react and attack a Sero from Aghelion, which Seros are stated to be in the data books to be a spiritual light. This is important because as we see that Captain being Mayuri is greater than Uryu, and just assuming he's twice as strong as him, one of the weakest captains would be the speed of light. But in which if we assume an even far stronger captain, that being Byakuya, is just equal to him in base, and if he uses his Bankai he becomes 10 times greater or be 10 times the speed of light. While Bankai Ichigo would be more than 10 times the speed of light, as he's not only perception blitzing him while in Bankai but also his attacks. And Byakuya's attacks are stated when he's using the palms, which are stated to move faster, and just assuming it's 2 times, Ichigo is shown to be able to continue to dodge them. Then he would be at least 20 times the speed of light. But something to note is that the amp for Bankai is a 5 to 10 times amp, and at this time Ichigo would most likely have the 5 times amp, as it's implied he hasn't mastered it, which is why it's hurting him in the fight, making base Ichigo, at least in this arc, 4 times the speed of light, which can be consistent as he blitzed the lieutenants, who could react and dodge the Nagashon, which is stated both inverse and data books to be rays or beams of light. Now this is where things kick up. For one-on-one opponent, at this time Ichigo was get his resolve and he was able to receive the full 10 times amp, as this should be consistent as he's able to retain in his Bankai consistently fine with long periods of time with no side effects. So now, towards the start of the Arrancar arc, he would be around 40 times the speed of light. But in his Hollow Mask, he would get an extra 10 times stronger, as holifications consistently stated to be as strong, not stronger than Bankai, so at least a 10 times amp, or he would be 400 times the speed of light. And later in this arc, this would become his new Bankai base, as he was able to fight Grimmjow in that base before he resurrectioned, as before he needed the holification to even go against him with one arm. And if he would ever add the Hollow Mask like he did against Grimmjow, he'd be 4,000 times the speed of light. And again, he was able to surpass this as his new Bankai base was able to fight and dodge Ukiura, in which Ukiura is the 4th Espada while Grimmjow's is 6th, and we see that Ukiura was able to speed blitz and one-shot that Ichigo right before he fought Grimmjow in his Hollow Mask, making his new Bankai base 4,000 times the speed of light. And again, when he uses the Holification or Hollow Mask, he get another 10 times, or he'd be 40,000 times the speed of light. Now yes, Ukiura was being pressed by said Ichigo, but he was still able to react and even outspeed him with the Hollow Mask. And when he enters his resurrection, he would be 10 times greater, as it's been stated that the same amp is applied from the Bankai. And in his second resurrection, he'd be at least another 10 times, so 10 times 10 is 100, meaning he'd be 100 times that of a Hollow Mask Ichigo, or be 4 million times the speed of light. And Ichigo in his Vasalord state was superior, so we just say he's 2 times great, or he'd be 8 million times the speed of light. And his Vasalord itself would be at least 200 times amp in speed from his Hollow Self Mask, and in general he'd be at 20,000 times amp in speed. And to avoid any contentious inverse arguments, we all know that Dangai Ichigo is much stronger than Vasalord Self, as he was stronger than 3rd Transcendent State Aizen, in which his first Transcendent State was transcendent to all Shinigami and Hollow in comparison, in which you already knew how strong Vasalord was. And as mentioned in his first state, it was stated he was evolved or a higher level of Zanpakuto that would include his Bankai, so it was at least a 10 times amp, as it's beyond that of a Bankai amp, and he at least got 2 times stronger in his second Transcendence and another 2 times in his third, and Dangai Ichigo is at least 2 times that. And if we say that the Transcendent Aizen multiplier starts right off from the Vasalord Ichigo, he'd be 40 times Vasalord, or be 160 million times the speed of light, while Dangai Ichigo would be 320 million times the speed of light. And Mugetsu Ichigo is in a state even beyond that, so another evolution that was stated, and we just assume again, just bare minimum, it would be a 10 times amp, as already another level beyond the level that was beyond Bankai. He would be 3,200,000,000 times the speed of light. And something to note, that a base True Shikai Ichigo was stated to be as strong as himself, who defeated Aizen and he regained his power, in which that Ichigo was the Mugetsu, so his new base would be that speed, so do with that with what you will. So scaling Ichigo's AP will be extremely easy to go over, as it's stated in the Unmasked Databook that becoming a Zangetsu allows one to exceed everything, but at the cost of everything. Essentially putting Mugetsu Ichigo above the entire verse at this time. Anyone who scales to him now, such as Aizen, Uwatch, and even Can't For Your Own World Kenpachi at this level as well. And this can be consistent, as these levels of fighters were considered higher dimensional by Aizen himself, as well as consistent with his plethora statements that put them or stated to be transcending all Shinigami and Hollow. This is important because a base True Shikai Ichigo was stated to regain his power he used to defeat Aizen, or his original power, meaning just his base True Shikai Ichigo would essentially scale most of the verse at this time, and any of the feats they had. Starting off, some blatant stuff, that being the Sokyokyu. It's stated to have the power to destroy the Soul Society itself. Now, I interpret this feat as they're referring to the planet, because if they're referring to the actual realm or universe, it would make other later feats very lackluster if Soul Society characters are blocking and or destroying this universal threat, making the Sokyokyu planetary, and Soul Society Ichigo by proxy. And this can be consistent, as legit in the next arc, just by Ichigo flexing his power can affect the entire world, and captains and high-end lieutenants have to put a limit on themselves so they don't affect the world just by existing. And of course, we have the infamous feat of Yamamoto being able to destroy the Soul Society while holding back by just existing, with all these feats being blatantly planetary, but we have much higher feats. As for an example, the Persian Shinigami known as Senna was able to release all of the Blink's energy to push back the Soul Society and the world of the living back before they collided. Now, just assuming they were only the planets of this feat, then yes, it would be blatantly planetary, but when taking a look at the Gyokyu itself, it's not only shown to have a star in it as shown in the holographic map of it, but even the light novels state that there's natural light in there, in which natural light comes from stars or suns, only more proof besides the visual confirmation. meaning at that moment she was able to be star level in terms of energy. This can be seen as consistent as the Fullbringer Yukio with his ability to create and control dimensions. He was able to create a dimension with a visible star in for Chad's training, in which said feed being calculated comes up to around solar system level in joules. And even Grimmjow, the Can't Fear Your Own World's second light novel, chapter 9, is just stated with this just singular Grand Race arrow would be stated to be potent enough to destroy the sun while in base. With all these feats being consistent, them being star level and either from being able to destroy or create one and then destroying realms with stars in them, i.e. Senna, and even the Kido Cannon was stated to be able to destroy the Kyogyuku as well as shown. And with all these feats, now a base true Shika Ichigo would easily scale to the solar system levels of power, and with his max transformations he would comfortably be putting him in these solar system levels of power relatively with ease. And at this moment I should probably go over why Memories of Nobody movie is canon. Well, for one, the Kyogyuku itself is stated and shown to exist in the original source material, that being the manga. Ichigo even recalls the time where he went into it, which only happened in the movie. Even at the end of the chapter, the author puts a little side note telling us to go watch the movie for more information, showing us he wants us to engage in the movie, which would confirm it to be even more canon. Not to mention it perfectly fits and aligns with the timeline, as there was a perfect 1 to 2 month time skip they had to prepare during the events, and this could have easily happened with the movie, as it would have even made sense for the time frame. And for anyone asking why doesn't anyone talk or remember about Senna, it was literally stated at the end of the movie that once she died she was completely erased from existence, so even where the memories of her would be erased. And it specifically noted that it was only her and not the events that conspired, meaning it would not matter if she was erased as the events still happened, which is why they can still remember the Kyogyuku as well as the other events that did not directly involve her or her existence. Now, to establish the upper echelon of power in Bleach, you must establish a few inverse stuff. A base Yuha is able to fight on par with Ichibe, who's not only the leader, but is also implied to be the strongest of the Squad Zero. Then he not only gets the Almighty Amp and effortlessly destroys Ichibe, but then absorbs the Mimihage, which is the right hand of the Soul King, and then absorbs the entirety of the Soul King. And people like base true Shika Ichigo scales to this Yuha to an extent, so putting these fighters of this caliber essentially above the entirety of their verse. The first main feat to go over is shown in the anime, in which one of the Squad Zero members, Shinjimaru, just by going Bankai, is able to shake all 3 realms simply by existing. They themselves confirmed this by even stating, and I quote, "Even the slightest use of our power would cause the heavens and the earths of the 3 realms to tremble." Now people say due to the phrase the heaven and the earth, it's referring to the planets and not the actual realms. This however is excluding the actual context and of the wording, as the actual kanji being used Tenchi, which doesn't refer to planet but actually refers to the universe or all of existence, meaning by simply existing she was able to shake all of the universe on some Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods shit. Now shaking the entire universe doesn't equate to destroying the universe, as shaking the universe is only including the actual mass or celestial bodies in it. And yes, before people question, Bleach has shown visually and demonstrated in many statements as well as to show that the Bleach cosmology has celestial bodies such as stars, galaxies, as well as repeated statements of the realms being universes. And the Soul Society and the world living are stated and implied to be parallel or equal to each other in size or in general to each other, with the calculations of this feat being calculated upwards of the 76 joules or multi-galaxy level. But these Soul King level fighters or above have higher ends, as just the death of the Soul King was able to cause everything including the Dangai to collapse and be destroyed. Even the Mimihage was able to stop this by just literally physically holding on to it. And Yuha not only absorbed both, but was stated just his existence would keep up the realms from collapsing and or being destroyed. Hell, even his dead corpse was stated to be able to stop the universe from destroying. He's even stated that he could have destroyed the Garganta. This would bare minimally of course get them to universal, but also taking a deeper look into their cosmology, the Dangai inside the light novels are stated to be hyperspace. Now looking at the kanji, it does more so a lot translates to hyperspace, but it could also mean subspace. Now when looking at the context of the Dangai, it does not fit the requirements of a subspace, as it's not a space located within inside a said or another space. It more fits or aligns with the definition of a hyperspace, which involves a space for either traveling to places, in most cases can use an FTL travel, but that's not the case specifically. The reason why it's so important because hyperspaces are innately higher dimensional or 4th dimensional objects or bodies. And we not only have the one statement, but even inside Bleach, the movie, anime, comics, Memories of Nobody, or essentially the manga adaptation of said movie, it again calls it a hyperspace by Kisuke, not in just the Japanese adaptation but also in the French adaptation as well, making the Bleach cosmology 4th dimensional or universal plus. But their cosmology can be considered higher with the includence of the Garganta. as in the Can't Fear Your Own World Volume 3 page 396. With the English translations of it, it states that the Garganta is an endless expanse. Now endless can mean boundless or to have no limits. It can also refer to infinity, but we don't actually need to make this argument, as the actual kanji being used is Mugen or Mugen-ne, which directly translates to infinite or infinity. It's essentially being stated that it's an infinite expanse or an infinite space. With the Garganta being the encompassing force of the Bleach cosmology, that means that it's infinite in comparison to everything, and that would also include the Dangai. Or the Bleach cosmology is infinite 4D or potentially multiversal plus. As we already established, Yuha scales to this, and with the base Ichigo somewhat scaling to this, making Ichigo universal plus to potentially multiversal plus. Ichigo's probably most lackluster quality about him is his abilities, or essentially he has almost none. He has the standard power nullification, as in Bleach, if you're just stronger than your opponent, you just naturally negate their attacks. It's also shown to be their abilities as well. And of course he can directly attack the soul, as that's just what they do in Soul Reapers. They are souls, and everything they do is soul based. They just consistently attack the souls directly. And for his biggest resistance is he has resistance to his existence erasure, as he could physically interact with Aizen, in which just his spiritual pressure alone can erase things from existence. Not just physical matter, but also shown to be souls, as it works on the other people as well. And his signature Getsuga Tensho and Getsu Jujutsu, and even the use of the Gran Rei Sero.
With Naruto and Ichigo scaled though, we can get into who exactly wins this matchup, and if you've been paying attention to both portions of the video, you'd understand that it really doesn't matter how high you think Naruto scales, as Ichigo's low end scaling is still up there with some of Naruto's best, and this isn't just in terms of AP either, since even earlier versions of Ichigo like his Vasto Lorde state should be more than capable of blitzing peak Naruto. So even though it pains me to say this, if Naruto and Ichigo were to somehow meet and ended up fighting, the result would be completely one-sided.